Hey everyone, welcome to the Arcade Labs YouTube channel. Construction completed in early 2023, and since then I've been working on setting up the game room, the electronics room, and the woodworking shop. Alright, let's go inside. I currently have 22 arcade games and 2 pinball machines. I've been collecting arcade games since the late 80s. Keeping all these games running requires regular maintenance to fix electronic and mechanical problems. Some of the topics I'll be covering on this channel are electronics repair, cosmetic fixes, upgrades, and general restoration. I'm also a collector of 80s gaming memorabilia, so I plan to include content on that occasionally too. On the far end here we have the kitchen and the gaming table. On the wall is a TV where we can connect a laptop, do teleconferencing, or stream a movie. Under the TV is a cabinet that I built recently. It's a display case with a bunch of 80s gaming memorabilia. Let's take a look at the arcade games. Here we have Pac-Man, which was released in 1980 by Namco. We got Burger Time, and here is Donkey Kong, which was released in 1981 by Nintendo. Donkey Kong's one of my all-time favorite games. Here we have an Atari 50th Anniversary, a Missile Command, Wizard of War, and Asteroids. Asteroids is a vector game that was made by Atari in 1979. This was actually the first arcade game that I bought way back in the 80s. I found it for sale at a Round Table Pizza. Here we have Zaxxon and Tron. Tron was made by Bally Midway in 1982 and coincided with the release of the Tron movie. Next we have a Donkey Kong Jr. game that was released in 1982. This is called a cocktail cabinet where you sit down and play. The game supports 2 players who take turns playing while the screen flips orientation to each side. Here we have Berserk, made by Stern Electronics in 1980. Berserk was one of the first games to include digitized speech. Star Wars is another classic vector game that was released by Atari in 1983. This is R-Type, which is a fun side-scroller that I used to play in the break room when I worked at Nintendo. Here we have Space Invaders and a Galaxian. And here's Dig Dug by Atari. Next is Robotron, which was released in 1982 by Williams Electronics. Here we have Tempest, which is currently out of order. I just rebuilt the monitor a few months ago, so it's sad to see it down again. I'll have to spend some more time on it soon. Here is a Frogger, and here is Joust, which is also out of order. As you've seen, I have at least 3 or 4 games that are currently out of order. Most of the arcade games here are 40 plus years old, so they require a certain amount of ongoing maintenance. Part of this hobby is working on the electronics and fixing the problems that happen. Later I'll show the electronics room where I work on repairing the games. Next, let's take a look at the pinball machines. The one on the right is called Egghead, and it was made in 1961 by a company called Gottlieb. This is an electromechanical game, which means it has no computer or integrated circuits, and instead it operates entirely using switches, relays, and other mechanical components. My parents actually bought this game when I was about 12 years old. We just happened to meet a person who owned some commercial pinball machines, and he had this one for sale. One of the unique features of this game is that you play tic-tac-toe on the center board by rolling over sensors and then hitting bumpers to place the X and O's on the board. It implements the tic-tac-toe game logic using a rotating mechanical cylinder inside that has dozens of switches and relays that maintain the game state. It's pretty amazing. To the left here we have a modern Godzilla pinball machine made by Stern Pinball. This game was released in 2021, which makes it exactly 50 years newer than the Egghead machine next to it. games have come a long way since then. Unlike the Egghead game, Godzilla has a computer inside that runs the game logic and drives the audio and the video. The game is also online and will automatically download software updates. Stern has a online service called Insider Connect that allows players to sign into the machine using a QR code reader on the front of the machine here. So you basically can scan a QR code from your phone, and then the machine will save your high scores and achievements, and then they'll show up on the Stern leaderboards. Godzilla has some innovative features, such as a destructible building that moves up and down. There's also a destructible bridge, and there's also a magnetic ball grab here behind Mechagodzilla. The game also has a nice soundtrack that includes the original Godzilla song by Blue Oyster Cult. Alright, let's take a look at the artwork. Most of the artwork on the walls of the game room are 80s movie posters. These are some of my favorite movies from that time, including Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, War Games, Tron, and of course the Star Wars trilogy. In the center of the room, we have some chairs and a coffee table. Under the table, we have a vintage Pac-Man rug, and on top is a Godzilla figure that I got to go with the Godzilla pinball machine. So to power all these games, I had 5 dedicated 20 amp circuits installed in the room. There's outlets in the walls and in the floor and also in the ceiling. Speaking of the ceiling, I have a DJI Rotosphere up there, which is a rotating light ball that can create a variety of nice effects. And back here is the bathroom. On the walls here I have some vintage Atari patent drawings, and then above the sink is a custom mirror that I made, which features bezel art from the Mario Brothers game. My wife had the idea of using bezel art to create an interesting frame for the mirror. Alright, let's take a look at the electronics room. Here is a Battlezone game that I've been repairing. It's almost done. This rack here has a security monitor on the top, and there's an amplifier there that powers the audio throughout the building. On the bottom shelf is an original NES console connected to a Sony Trinitron TV. The center table here provides some extra workspace and storage for work in progress. Here's a desk with the computer that I use in the shop. And this is another game that I'm working on repairing. It's a Robotron in a mini cabinet, which is a fairly rare game. The monitor in this one stopped working a while back. Here we have my electronics bench. This is where I repair game boards, monitor assemblies, and other things that stop working. Let's see. These shelves here contain a variety of replacement parts for arcade games. This includes things like flyback transformers, ICs, transistors, capacitors, and other parts. It's nice having a good selection of parts on hand when making repairs. Over here we have some vintage game cartridges and some surplus boards from arcade games. Some of these work and others are just for parts. On this whiteboard I keep track of what games need repairs and the details of the problems that they have. Here's a closer look at the electronics bench. On the bottom we have soldering and desoldering stations, a multimeter, and an electronics microscope. On the top shelf is an oscilloscope and some other test equipment. Down here we have the monitor assembly from the Robotron Mini that we saw earlier. I am not sure yet what's wrong with it. This is the woodworking side of the building. It's taken me about a year to get everything set up over here. Here's a Laguna bandsaw and a drill press. This is the first thing that I built for the shop. It's a 4-foot by 8-foot assembly table made from hard maple with a Baltic birch top and a walnut band around the edge. One of the features that I designed for this table was a spot to sit at it like a desk. This is a nice feature for when you want to sit down and work on something. Here we have what's called a French cleat tool wall. It consists of horizontal slats where you can place hangers to hold tools and other items. The hangers hook onto the slats and you can move them around as much as you like to organize the tools. Below is a shelf that I built to go under the tool wall. I have hand tools on top and more storage on the shelves underneath. Here we have a Schoberg style workbench that was built by my grandfather, who was a professional cabinet maker. It was given to me recently by my dad, who is also a woodworker and the person who taught me all about woodworking. Here we have a SawStop table saw next to the dust collection system. Above it is a jet air filter. Here is a miter station that I built. In the center is the miter saw, and basically you lay down materials on the platform to cut. Over here is a jet planer, and beyond that we have a Powermatic jointer. Both the planer and the jointer were given to me by my dad. I think the jointer was originally owned by my grandfather, so it's probably 50 or 60 years old. Over here we have a woodworking CNC machine. It's an Elite Foreman by Onefinity with a 4-foot by 4-foot work surface where it can cut out and carve materials. This is the controller that drives the machine. I can send plans to it over Wi-Fi from the computer in the electronics room. On there right now is a Pac-Man project that I had the machine cut out. I built a 6-foot by 6-foot table to hold the machine, and on the lower shelf is the dust collection system. The whole thing is on wheels so I can move it out if necessary. Down below is the spindle VFD controller and the CNC interface box. Over here we have a counter with some cabinets and the shop sink. Down here on the far end we have material storage. I like working with maple and walnut hardwood. I have some other species here such as fir, pine, cedar, and oak. There's also some exotic hardwoods including purple heart, zebrawood, wenge, and bloodwood. Down on the end there are some sheet goods including maple and walnut plywood and some Baltic birch. I'm happy to have most of the shop infrastructure work done and can now spend time on general woodworking and arcade game projects. Thanks for watching the video this far, and I hope you enjoyed the tour of the shop and the game room.